Yo, Shortbox Nation, this is Botter, and I'm here to tell you right now that con season starts early this year with the return of Northeast Florida's premier anime, comic book, and sci-fi event, Collective Con. That's right, Northeast Florida's largest pop culture convention returns for its 10th year on March 8th through the 10th at the Prime Osborne Center in Jacksonville, Florida. 10 years of Collective Con, they're pulling all the stops out to make sure this is a can't-miss event. And the guest list they got going, don't even get me started on the guest list. I mean, they've got A-list celebrity guests and voice actors from some of your favorite movies, anime, and video games like Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton, Ray Park, Trisha Helfer, Ross Marquand, Max Middleman, and Bo-Katan herself will be there, Katie Sackhoff. Tell me what other convention is giving you the opportunity to meet Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings, Darth Maul, and One Punch Man all under the same roof. Only at Collective Con. And if you're looking to get some of your favorite comics signed, or if you want to get an original sketch from some of the best comic artists in the world, well, you're in luck, because there'll be plenty of comic and creator guests there, like DC comic artist extraordinaire Clay Mann, Harvey Award-nominated illustrator John Taylor Christopher, Marvel and DC cover artist Chris Stevens, and acclaimed Star Wars author Timothy Zahn. They'll all be at Collective Con this year. And if you're looking to bring the family, or if you want to make a weekend out of it, you're in luck, because there'll be so much going on at Collective Con that weekend in the form of vendors, fan panels, video game tournaments, cosplay contests, after parties, and a bunch of fan events. You can purchase single and 3-day weekend passes now using the link in this episode's show notes, or by going to collectivecon.com to book your tickets and hotel. Buy your tickets now, and I'll see you at Collective Con, March 8th through the 10th. Now let's start the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Short Box Podcast.
The Short Box Podcast is recorded live from Jacksonville, Florida.
Yo, Short Box Nation. Welcome back to the podcast. What's up? How y'all doing? If you're new to the show, took you long enough, but welcome to the show. This is the Short Box Podcast, the comic book talk show that brings you the best conversations about comics and pop culture inspired by them. My name is Botter, and this is episode 393. And you're in for a good one today. I probably say that all the time, but you're really in for a good one today. Okay?
Tell them the truth this time. It's for real.
One day I'll be like, you might not want to listen. This one's kind of shitty. It's not our best. It's not our best skip this week. But it's a really good one if you're a DC fan that's been waiting for us to finally show some love to DC. I know it's been kind of a Marvel and interview heavy lately. But we're putting the spotlight on DC today, all right? Today we're revisiting the 2011 Flashpoint comic series ahead of the Flash movie premiering later this week. In the comics, Flashpoint was a limited series that radically changed the status quo for the DC universe. Flashpoint single-handedly launched a publisher-wide relaunch of their entire comic line and brought forth a new era of storytelling called The New 52. And in a similar fashion, the hope and intention of the Flash movie, which is directly inspired by the Flashpoint comic, shares a similar goal, which is to reset the continuity and get the hell out the way so everyone's favorite filmmaker turned studio executive James Gunn can clean up this mess, all right? He's going to lead fans into a new era of DC cinematic storytelling, and he needs movies like this Flash movie and I believe the Aquaman and Blue Beetle movie to set the groundwork. But specifically, this Flash movie, since it deals with alternate realities and going back in time, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we aren't rebuilding an entire movie line. Our job here is much more simple. Our goal today is to revisit the comic series Flashpoint and see how it holds up today, and to see if we can spot any early parallels or similarities between the source material and the movie based on what we've seen in trailers and what we know so far. Now, if you're watching a video version, you know already, I'm not alone in today's mission. Sitting with me in the Short Box studio is the special Edmund Danzart.
What's up?
Ed? How you doing?
Good, man.
Also joining us and calling in remotely from Kansas City is one of the hosts of the comic book reading club turned award-winning comic podcast, First Issue Club. First Issue Club is a podcast that specializes in, wait for it, first issues.
Huh.
Why specifically first issues? Because their goal is to help make comic books a more welcoming and communal reading experience for old and new readers alike. And I'd have to say they're doing a pretty damn good job at it. Ed, you surprised me. You're already aware of First
Yeah.
Issue Club. You've been listening to them for a while.
Yep.
You've been cheating on me for a minute.
I didn't know I couldn't listen to other podcasts. I didn't know that was part of the contract.
Nah, that's the type of rule I got. I rule with an iron fist around here. No other comic podcast but your own voice, Ed. You know that. All right, well, Ed, help me out here. Let's go ahead and welcome our guy Greg Lichtag from the First Issue Club to the show.
Oh, hey, what an intro. Holy cow. Botter, how do you fit a whole studio audience in there, man? All that applause and cheering, that's crazy.
All that Patreon money. We got a studio set up, live
I'm
crowd.
counting at least 50 people.
That's right, patrons. This is where your money goes, right? To the illusion. Greg, man, this is a long time coming. I've been joking the last couple of episodes that it feels like I've been on my comic podcast homies world tour, and I've gotten just about everyone from our little circle. And you know, I was like, man, I got to get Greg on. It's just been taking a minute, but you're here with us, man.
You're in the land of barbecue and championship rings.
There's no better. That actually might be a nice candle. I would be down for that candle. Hell yeah.
Man, I'm super excited to be here. We here at the First Issue Club are big fans of the Shortbox Nation, so to be here with you guys is an honor, and to talk about Flashpoint is even more exciting because it's one of maybe the biggest events that happened in DC in the last 15, 20 years. So I'm excited to be here and talk about it and hang out with you guys for a little bit.
What sets First Issue Club apart from other comic podcasts, and what are some recent first issues that you guys have covered?
Oh man, I don't really know what sets us apart is, we started the show kind of out of a conversation we all were having in a bar one day about how we were only the 3 or 4 nerds that we knew in our little circle that read comic books. And we're just like, how can we get more people to read comic books? And, we're just like, we got on the discussion of like, it's hard to get into comic books because you don't know where to start. The numbering is weird. There's a lot of different people in spandex. Like, which ones are the best ones? And then when you find out that they come out every week, you're even more confused because, you feel like you're already 10 steps behind. So we started the show with the thinking of like, people will come to us to see what is the hotness of the week. What do they want to read? What's the good to read? Save a little money to skip the stuff that's bad. And we just wanted to have like a fun social club of like-minded nerds to join us and talk comics. And as far as the best ones that we've read so far, there's, oh my gosh, Image is like just kind of dunking right now on incredible first issues. So if you're a new reader, I always tell you or tell them to go to the Image comics, and they're kind of their own contained little entity. Marvel and DC is a little harder to get into with their first issues because we always joke about how issue like 425 could be a number 1 instead of like 425. So it's just more confusing to get into, but just stay with the indies, stay with Image. That's where the bread and butter is for the good stuff.
And the cool thing about Image too is they have those Image firsts that are $1 that you can kind of just dip your toe in. And Marvel and DC used to do that, but they just reprint them at full price now. So,
dude, so annoying.
Yeah, it's super annoying.
Those little facsimile things they do, they're just like, it's $8, and you're just like, it doesn't need to be.
Everything's the same, but except the price. They like alter the price to like current pricing, which it was a bummer because they were for a while they were like their dollar, issues of important storylines and things like that. But I love the fact that Image does that dollar thing, and good stores will have like a rack of just those Image dollar firsts.
Oh yeah, and I think they've already done like first ones of like Saga and Sweet Tooth, and not Sweet Tooth, but like Monstrous and all those big heavy hitters that Image has. They're just like and it's so smart to make them $1 to get new readers in and interested in there to buy those trades.
Before we get started talking about Flash and Flashpoint, let me address maybe the most important thing on my list today, which is welcoming the most recent new members of our Shortbox family, Ed and Greg. Help me welcome Mac Godwin and Steve Gamet to our Patreon community, and getting their names added to the long list of patron saints that we've already got going on. Big shout outs to Mac, big shout outs to Steve. Thank you guys so much for joining our Patreon community. Thank you for taking your support to the next level. And I promise to do good things with your money, all right? Like adding it to my existing Amazing Fantasy number 15 fund. All right. It's growing in size, and one day I'll be able to buy an Amazing Spider-Man 15. I can't even say it.
Then the
straight.
Patreon will be over.
Thank you guys for this 10-year-long project and helping me achieve my holy grail of comics. I appreciate all of you. Bye-bye.
You're gonna need one of those Scrooge McDuck vaults to dive in with all the coins.
I wish it was like that for the Patreon money. I'd quit my job if that was the case. I'm kidding. It all goes back into the show. And one more housekeeping thing to share before we get started. Comic-Con season is ramping up. All right. It'll be San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con and all the other great cons before you know it. But my favorite one to attend is Heroes Con, and that's taking place this weekend, June 16th through the 18th. And I'm fortunate once again to not only be attending the event, I'll be there enjoying the festivities myself, but I'll also be hosting an incredible panel with the creators of Berserker, one of the best-selling comics that's coming out through Boom Studios right now. That's right. I'll be talking to Matt Kent and Ron Garney about the making of the book, what it was like working with Keanu Reeves on the series, and everything else you'd want to know about the Berserker series. That's taking place Saturday, June 17th at 3:30 in room 208. You don't got to memorize that. It'll be on the Heroes Con schedule. So if you'll be at Heroes Con this weekend, plan to attend the event. I'd love to meet you if you're a Short Box listener. It'll be a good time. And speaking of Boom Studios, in this episode, we'll also be selecting the winners of our Boom Studios comic bundle giveaway. That's right. The contest that we announced 2 episodes ago, we're finally picking the winners. We're doing that this episode as well. So we got a full show for you today. With that out the way, let's finally deep dive into Flashpoint. If you've never read the comic, like I said at the top, it's all good. We got you covered. Or if it's been a minute since you last read it, like myself, I'm going to go ahead and kick things off with a quick recap of the story. Consider this like a crash course into Flashpoint. Flashpoint is written by award-winning and New York Times best-selling writer, film and TV producer, and showrunner Jeff Johns. The man has added a few accolades to his name since I last checked. You've also got art duties handled by comic book royalty like the incomparable Andy Kubert, and breathtaking inking and coloring work handled by Sandra Hope and Alex Sinclair, respectively. The story starts off with Barry Allen waking up at his desk and discovering the world he knows has drastically changed. His family is alive, but former loved ones are strangers, and close friends are either different, gone, or worse off. This twisted version of this world is also on the brink of a cataclysmic war brewing between Emperor Aquaman's forces and Wonder Woman's devastating army of Furies. And to make matters worse, Earth's greatest heroes, the Justice League, the team that the Flash is on, well, they're nowhere to be found in this iteration of the world he's woken up in. It's a world where America's last hope lies in the hands of Cyborg and the few and fractured heroes of this world that still remain. Like Batman. But it's not the Batman you know. This one's way more brooding, if that was even possible. He's way more violent, and he's not even Bruce Wayne. He's actually Bruce Wayne's dad, Thomas Wayne. And he's got a 5 o'clock shadow, which might be the most surprising aspect of all of this. That was the biggest sign. That's not the Batman I know. Anyways, this world is clearly running out of time, and it's up to the Flash to find the villain responsible for flipping everything on its head. Now, spoiler warning on this 12-year-old comic, but an important plot point nonetheless. The real culprit and reason for this messed up world is none other than Barry Allen himself. All right, that's some real Michael Jackson staring at the man in the mirror, asking him to change his ways. All right, it's all because of Barry. You see, Barry Allen decided to break every single time travel rule that movies like Back to the Future has taught us. He makes a brash decision based on grief and regret, and he goes back in time to prevent the death of his mother from the hands of his arch nemesis, Reverse Flash, who is a diabolical son of a bitch, all right, for lack of better terms. He is diabolical, pure evil, and super convoluted. So that is a discussion for another day. But at the end of the day, it's Barry's haphazard attempt to change the past that fractures the timeline, and it's up to him to correct the past before he loses everything he's ever loved for good. End scene, that's the gist of the story in a nutshell. But if you're unfamiliar with how comic events of this magnitude work, especially any publisher-wide crossover events dealing with alternate timeline stories, Flashpoint was a monster event. It consisted of a total 61-issue run. The series crossed over with other titles and DC characters, and there were 16 separate 3-issue miniseries. Don't ask me to do 16 times 3 right now, because I would fail, but it's a lot. That's a lot of comic books that spun out of this event. And they each told isolated stories about this new world, as well as the altered heroes and villains. You just got more in depth the further away you got from the core series. So if we wanted to cover Flashpoint in totality, we'd honestly need to start a whole new and separate podcast to cover the whole thing in detail. That actually might be what we use our Patreon money for, is to start a spin-off. So for today's intents and purposes, we're only going to stick with the core 5-issue story arc of Flashpoint. If I went any further than that, I think Ed would just quit the show. All right, he'd be like, "I'm taking whatever leave Ashley."
That's all I read. So I mean, I didn't read any of those other issues. So
you're in the right place, Ed, because that's where the main story takes place, and that's where we're going to live today. But that is, for the most part, everything you need to know going into the rest of this review. Reading the story, it's not required for this episode, but we always recommend you check out the comic for yourself, which you can do on a few different. You got some options to do so. You can read it on the DC Universe app like I did. You could read it on Comixology. If you got a library card, it's available on Hoopla and Libby. And for sure, you could purchase the book at your local comic shop if you prefer a physical book as well. Is this anyone's first time reading it? Ed, is this your first time?
No.
Oh, okay.
Second time.
Second time. Greg, what about you?
Yeah.
Sounds like
Second time.
Second time here as well. So we're all kind of in the same boat. Greg, were you reading this real time when it came out in 2011? Yo, this is Botter. Sorry for interrupting this episode, but I'll keep it brief. I wanted to let you know about a massive sale we have going on over at the Shortbox store on all of our merchandise and apparel. That's theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com. You can now save 20% off your entire order using the discount code YOO, Y-O-O. So if you've been waiting for the right time to finally buy that gauntlet snapback, or if you ever wanted to buy any of the shirts you see me wear on the podcast, well, now's your chance to get them for a steal. We still have a few sizes left of everything, but they won't last long, and once they're gone, they are gone. And then I mentioned that all of our apparel is screen printed on high quality material. None of that heat transfer or direct to garment stuff. Our shirts are some of the most comfortable ones you'll ever wear, and the hats look even better in person. So wear your support for the Shortbox Nation proudly, knowing that you're going to look damn good doing it. Get to theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com as soon as you can, and don't forget to use that discount code YOO, Y-O-O, to save 20% off your entire order. All of this information can be found in this episode's show notes if you want to get there faster. Thanks for not pressing fast forward. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I think I was. It was, the scuttlebutt of the local comic book shop. Everyone was talking about Flashpoint. Everyone was, discussing it like at your local water cooler when everyone came in on Wednesday to see, what was going on with Barry. It was huge. And like you said, it reached multiple different series. It had an insane amount of tie-ins that was borderline too much. And, it was a fun conversational piece that, we hadn't really seen, we hadn't seen for sure when it came out. And so that was what made it more exciting and kind of fun to keep up with, as it came out. Like, you wanted to be in the shop that day when it came out to talk about it with other nerds.
Well said. Ed, what do you remember about this? Were you working at the shop, Ed, when this came out?
No, I was on comic hiatus for a while. I got back into it a few years after this. So I did, when I started working in the comic shop was maybe a couple years into New 52.
Okay.
So then working there, okay, well, I should read this.
So you saw the aftermath.
Yeah.
Got it.
And all the cheers and jeers for the New 52 in general. So I was like, what does this mean? I didn't know what any of it meant. I was like, what's New 50? I didn't know anything because I've been out of the game for so long. So when I came back in, and then I'll see what all the fuss is about, because, people were still, that was still a big event. Mm-hmm. So I just grabbed the trade and read it then.
At that time, I was already buying anything with Jeff Johns' name on it. And I mean, Andy Kubert is like a top 5 artist for me, top 10, if not top 5 artists. So it was like, this just was a power group, it's like, oh, yeah. And I vaguely remember thinking this was going to be the equivalent of like, this was going to be DC's Age of Apocalypse, was like the vibe I was getting. Was, this was a post-apocalyptic story. Characters, all the promo had showed like, Emperor Aquaman. He's got like the scar on his face. You know, Wonder Woman's looking crazy. Batman, it's got the 5 o'clock shadow, so
Red
extra
eyes.
scary. Yeah,
The
red eyes.
didn't bother you? It's the 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the red eyes for me, Botter.
Him shooting pistols at everybody. Wait a minute, that 5 o'clock shadow is weird. I'm cool with the rest of it.
Don't trust that beard.
He
Hold
shaves
on.
every other day. That's fine.
My first time reading it was really enjoyable. I remember thinking how like edgy, how cool it was. It looked beautiful. I can't recall all of the different spinoffs I was reading, but I know I read like the Aquaman spinoff and the Wonder Woman spinoff because I just wanted to understand the whole story. I was interested in going into all the different corners and nooks and crannies and, you know, finding out like how this character has changed, what this team is up to in this world, and all the different shakeups that were going on in this. So you know, this has definitely got a fond place for me. And even to this day, the way I kind of view DC continuity, or at least my readership, is still like pre New 52 and post 52. And you know, and when you consider that Flashpoint is the catalyst for that that launch and that era of books, it's definitely integral, I think, to my relationship with DC.
Jeff Johns was kind of the architect for almost 10 years at DC of like, you know, he did Flashpoint, he did Rebirth, New 52, Doomsday Clock. Like he was this like giant puppeteer, just like making this whole intricate multi-universe story. And, you know, Flashpoint, I don't know if they expected it to be as gigantic as it is. Like they really, no pun intended, caught lightning in a bottle and were just like, okay, let's just go with it. And then they tried to duplicate it a few times over the years to, you know, whatever success you want to call it. But I mean, Flashpoint really was this huge pivotal thing that I think multiple publishers looked at and was just like, okay, how can we copy what they just did and do it over here? So, you know, to everyone listening, Flashpoint is a gigantic freaking deal.
I'm glad you said that about catching lightning in a bottle, because this is one of those plot points where in this day and age, we've seen it's not a completely like new idea. Like I think even the CW Flash show did their interpretation of Flashpoint, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's another instance I can't recall off the top of my head, but Barry Allen going back in time to fix something and then having a butterfly effect feels like it is not a brand new idea in today's day and age. But if you put yourself in 2011, I could be wrong, and maybe a very diehard Flash or DC fan will correct me. Isn't it wild to think that in 2011, this was the first time they considered doing this story? Like Flash going back in time to save his mom and this having impacts to the timeline? Like, Is there any other instance that you guys can think of Flash doing this and it having an impact this, maybe not this big, because I think what Greg said is perfect. This is kind of an outlier, but I guess how often does Flash go back in time and fuck things up? Is that a trope because of this series, or is that always kind of been a thing?
This definitely has to be heavy influence because there's been multiverse shenanigans for a while, but this is different because it's the same timeline. It's not, I don't know what the show is, but I know the movie he's like running into another version of himself, where this is like his current timeline is being fractured and he's getting memories of what he remembers and then what this new reality is basically fighting. The memories are fighting each other. So it's a unique a take on it because it's not just, oh, that's just Flash from Earth 85 and they're all cucumbers. Yeah, you know, it's all, you know, it's nothing like that. It's not like a write off like, oh, well, that was Superman he's in the crime syndicate, so he's the bad guy. He just looks exactly the same. Or someone with a goatee is the bad guy from another. You know, this is like the same reality that's basically being fractured in a huge way for what seems like one person, you know, because that's when I first read it. Or when I first thought about it, I was like, man, is Flash's mom really this instrumental for like everything going to shit?
I guess she's super pivotal.
I know. It's like, man, so if she's lives, Aquaman and Wonder Woman fight across the earth, pretty much destroying it. Man, that's wild stakes.
Barry's mom makes a mean apple pie. When she died, the recipe died too, right? And Barry's like, I got to go back and restore my mom.
To add on to that, think about this. If Bruce dies, his parents turn into either the Joker or another version of Batman. It's just like, how integral are these like little kids to the survival of, I don't know, millions of other
and
people?
He could kill Hitler on the way. on the way back.
Yeah.
Hey, get Hitler and then come get your mom good, then come back.
The apple pie recipe priority first. All right. All right. What would you guys say are the larger themes and topics introduced or explored in the story? Let's start off with that, and then I want to talk about the creative team.
I think really the hero's hubris of, I can fix anything.
This guy's good at hubris. That's a good word.
That's really good.
I'm
Hubris.
telling you, man, I did a bunch of homework for this show because I didn't look like a fucking idiot. But I mean, that's the main one that hit me right in the head of just like Flash's, in any superhero really, of just like, I have these great powers. That means I can probably fix anything. And then you go to fix something and you just fuck it up even worse. And so that's the one that just smacked me right across the face.
That's a good one. And I want to add grief and regret, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's only so much we can handle and do with grief and regret, like things that, a lot of times like an internal journey when you lose someone or you've got regrets. Like a lot of times it's up to you to like resolve that in a positive way. But when you've applied those things to superheroes who have the ability, like Greg, you said, like to fix things, that makes for an interesting story. And I think Jeff Johns tapping into that made for a really good story. I just repeated myself twice, but yeah, I'm gonna say grief and regret were pretty large themes. Because I mean, Flash wouldn't have done that if he didn't have these feelings, and then obviously the temptation with power.
Yeah, it's kind of encapsulating what you said. You have to accept that you can't change the past, and you have to understand that even terrible things kind of shape who you are.
Right.
I can't say it any better than you, Greg, but it's just like, I have all these powers. I can go back and I can make everything perfect, and you can't. It's like you fix one broken thing, something else breaks, and it never ends, and you just end up going mad and becoming the villain.
And what is perfect really? Because honestly, Barry may have had a perfect life because his mom was there and he was happy, but his dad died of a heart attack.
So you lose something.
You're always going to lose something. And just because you have the perfect life doesn't mean that you created the perfect life for someone else.
It's the law of equivalent exchange, like the Full Metal Alchemist.
As Jeff Johns and that big brain of his just making it all happen.
Obviously, it's very selfish and narrow-minded on Barry's part. You shoot him some bail because you're like, man, if I had the power to go back in time, think of all the shit I'd probably, fix and all the caution that I would throw to the wind. I think that's why this story, the premise for the story is fascinating. Even though I personally felt like it took a little bit to get to that point, but I'll get into more of my pros and cons here in a sec. Let's talk about the creative team before we dive any further into the story. Because we talked a little bit about Jeff Johns, and I agree with what Greg was saying. It feels like when you consider that he wrote Flashpoint, which launched, New 52, and then that Rebirth, like he was brought back to once again restart the DC universe. That's pretty fucking epic. Jeff Johns is like DC's ace in the hole. Let's bring him in to, write a really good story to set a new stage.
Like, we're starting over. Jeff, come in here.
Yeah. That's like when Marvel calls up Jonathan Hickman, just like, hey, we need some graphs and charts,
exactly.
man.
Thank you. Jeff Johns is who DC calls for that level of like, we want to get a blockbuster out there. We want to like get some hype and make sure that these books sell. I've been a fan of Jeff Johns since like his 2005 Green Lantern run. And I cannot stress how important that series was to like my comic journey. That was like that and Planet Hulk were the first two books I ever put on my own comic pull list. Like Jeff Johns could do no wrong to me. From Blackest Night to DC Rebirth, I think he's a cornerstone for DC Comics. Full stop, period. I don't know what, I just had to give him his props. But even before Green Lantern, I mean, you consider his JSA run, his Teen Titans run. I mean, hell, his Flash run, like the Flash work he was doing with Scott Collins before doing Flash Rebirth or even Flashpoint. Like the dude has grinded and made a name for himself, like from the trenches of like writing monthly comic book long form run series. That was a lot of words, a lot of adjectives, but you get my point. This dude is a seasoned writer. Now, I want to also give credit to the art team as well, because Andy Kubert. What words come to mind when you think of Andy Kubert, Greg?
Oh, he's like from a pedigree family of illustrators. you got Joe and you got Adam and their school of art that he's teaching at right now. I mean, and if you're a kid in the 90s, you know that name. It's just synonymous with comic books. It's like just like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Like those are just the names that appear on your comic book Mount Rushmore, by default. They've just been, chiseled into the history of it because they've just had a huge impact on, honestly, how comic books look and feel and flow. Like they reinvented, maybe not reinvented, but they definitely created a style that everyone either consciously or subconsciously kind of either rips off or pays homage to. I mean, you don't start your own art school because you like to draw. It's just a passion of yours.
Yeah. I think you could have stopped at the art school, right? It's like, this guy is so good. This guy is so good. His family, he comes from a family that draws so good. They teach other artists to be as good as them, right? Ed, what about you, man? What words come to mind about Kubert?
He's really good. He's not, just because of my aesthetics and tastes, he's not my favorite, but I can't deny he's talented and good. And like I said, he survived the 90s when everyone was drawing like McFarlane and Jim Lee. His style was on par with those guys and kind of survived without him having to change his style. His stuff is, I think when you ask somebody like what a comic book looks like, you'll see his art. It's like, oh, this is, everyone's in proportion, not too stylized, but just super, super solid. I think even more technically proficient than Adam and his dad. I hate to say it because I love Joe Kubert's Sergeant Rock stuff. I had a ton of those as a kid. But like, he's just a solid guy. His work fits perfectly with superhero stuff. Like that's a guy you want doing big cinematic superhero work like Flashpoint.
You're right.
It's great.
You couldn't think of anyone better to draw Flashpoint. He's kind of like a drummer in a way. Like he'll find a pocket and he'll just stick to the pocket. And it's consistent from like issue 1 until the very end. In this case, like all 5 issues are super strong all the way through, like consistent from panel to panel, from the biggest splash page to the smallest little corner to the smallest moment. It's just very consistent artwork. He's very technical. And like I said, he'll find like a pocket. He'll be able to tell you like a consistent visual story. And then he'll hit you over the head with like the fucking drum solo. And it's like this epic splash page, man. Like Andy Kubert is a rock star.
I think that's the thing about house artists, though. That's why they get those jobs. They're just like, we need someone who can be consistent, on time, and is dynamic.
I'm going on a ledge here. I'm pulling a Barry Allen, and I'm just making a brash statement here. But Andy Kubert might be one of the most consistent artists of his career,
his generation, or
or career wise, right?
Oh yeah,
like the dude has been drawing comics for me since like the 90s.
He's
right?
still drawing,
if not before that. And to your point, he's still drawing, and it's still really good. And when you look at some of his peers and contemporaries who have been drawing as long, and I won't name any names, but there's a few now where you're like, man, that are constantly being compared to their old stuff. They don't draw as well. I mean, right. Shit. We talked about it last episode. I guess I said I wasn't going to say names, but and this is no shade to them. I mean, I like all of them. Your Frank Millers, your John Romita Jr.'s are the most immediate ones that come to mind. And in regards to fans bitching, complaining, or being critical about their work today versus the prime stuff, I don't think Andy Kubert falls in that line because he's good at what he does. Like, yeah, I think he can do this stuff with his eyes closed.
Yeah, he's had longevity and consistency. Like, you're right, is key, and he's never followed trends. You can look at it and think, oh, could be from 1995, or this could be from last week.
Yes, you cannot tell the timeline.
It is a timeless style, because a lot of times these stylized guys, their work looks dated. It gets, it'll look dated after a while, or, oh, that's a 90s look, or that's a, as much as I like Todd McFarlane, I'll see a lot of his stuff, and it's like, oh, that's like 92, bro. So
they defined a generation, and I think Andy Kubert's artwork kind of like has always fit in regardless of generation.
He's like kind of like that blue collar guy. He's just coming in, working,
draftsman, technical.
He's not wanting to. I mean, he's already, the lineage is there, so he's not trying to build empires like Uncle Todd or Jim Lee. He's not trying to. Jeff Johns was good, and then he just disappeared all of a sudden now that Jim Lee's president. This is weird.
And this is not the episode of the Jim Lee conspiracy.
All right.
But I should have mentioned on the topic of the Kubert lineage, is it Andy's daughter or is it Adam's daughter? But their daughter, is it Emily Kubert?
Mm-hmm. They're doing a book on Image right now. I think.
Wow. I didn't even know that.
Even the next
in their
generation of
blood.
Kuberts are that good at drawing. So I didn't mean for this to turn into an Andy Kubert artist spotlight, but I'm here for it. All right. All right. Let's put a spotlight on Alex Sinclair and Sandra Hope, the colorist and inker respectively, because I feel like they both knocked it out the park, and they really should be brought up more for their contribution. I think just in general, inkers and colorists sometimes get like they're a second thought compared to the writer and artist. But Alex Sinclair and Sandra Hope, the inks and colors in this were phenomenal. If Andy Kubert, if he brought the actors and the in the stage, they brought the lighting, the soundboard. They brought everything else to make this a complete blockbuster. There are some splash pages in here that feel absolutely cinematic. One in particular is when Barry wakes up in this new world. He's confused. He's running around and he runs into his mom, and they have like a moment where they hug, and it's a full splash page. It's right there in the middle of the police precinct. The lighting on that looked like something from a Broadway play.
There's cool lighting for sure.
Ambiance and emotion. Yeah.
Great package, like a great team to bring this together for sure.
Long story short, the creative team on the Flashpoint is a prime example of like every piece of the comic book puzzle all working together at the top of their game for a magnificent product. All right, moving on. I want to hear, how did it sit with you guys? Did you like it on for your second reread? Any standout issues, panels, pages, or moments that come to mind?
This event did something that was kind of unique. If you just look at the Flashpoint 1 through 5, which I know is hard because there's so many different avenues you can go. If you just look through Flashpoint 1 through 5, it told a pretty standard story because you only get an allusion to what's going to happen in the future, like in the last 3 panels of the last issue. And that's totally different than what happens in events nowadays. They try to give you too much exposition too quickly. But Flashpoint 1 through 5 is like kind of a beautiful story about trying to solve a problem in this alternate main timeline that we're in, just like a fun detective story, told in this grand way that has huge repercussions that we don't even know about yet. Hint, the New 52. And I thought it was just like, if you just stick to issues 1 through 5, it's kind of awesome just seeing it blossom and just like show itself. And like when you find out that Barry Allen is the real reason for all this happening, you're kind of just sitting there just like, what the hell? When did that come from? And it was just so cool watching it kind of unravel like that. And I think we've gotten away from that with current Marvel and DC because for whatever reason, they're trying to sell variant covers, they're trying to sell issues. There's different things we could probably talk about, but it's just like, the nuance and the poetry really isn't there anymore. And I think Jeff Johns was more concerned about telling a concise and fun story than just like a big payday for someone.
Well said. I can get behind that. First time I read it, I thought it was edgy, beautiful artwork, cool alternate takes on characters. I would have told you then this is a 10 out of 10 book. But that's because I had read some of the other Splinter stories and some of the spin-offs. Reading it today, minus the rose-colored glasses, I think this lacks just a little bit of the emotional punch and feels a tad anticlimactic because so much context is needed for the time-traveling elements of the story. I guess it didn't dawn on me then, but I found it interesting reading it now that it was only 5 issues for the core story, when you're used to 6 being like usually the minimum, and then sometimes 12 being the maximum. And a lot of times 12 is like way too much, and you're like, they should have wrapped it up at 7. And then when you have it too short, you're like, it needs another issue. I'm going to say I do wish it had another issue to let it breathe a little, because I thought the reveal with Eobard Thawne or Reverse Flash showing up the last issue felt just a little lackluster, because he shows up and he's like, surprise, it's you, Barry Allen.
It's all you.
And
memory punch.
Yeah. And let me explain why it's you. And it's a lot of context, and they're having a fight. It's like Barry fighting Reverse Flash, and Barry's denying it. He's like, there's no way I did it. And he's like, I'm going to explain to you.
Yeah.
And it feels like a lot of talking head, and it takes I think the focus out of the action. You know, I think that could have been delivered in a different way.
I'm looking at it from just this. If this was a standalone thing, these were like 60 books. You know, there was like 50. I mean, I understand.
5
like,
issues out of 60 is a terrible ratio.
People are starting to get mad now. Let's tidy this up. But if this came out today as like a standalone thing, I think 12 issues, please, to like flesh it out more. But not reading the other tangential things, the Booster Gold and the one shots and all that stuff, and not reading it during that time, this, like I said, this is great. But I'm not a big fan of having to read 60 books for one story.
That's fair.
You know, for one event that's basically going to start from scratch. So essentially meaning what? Yeah, I think it's a bit just in this current viewing, like I totally agree with what you're saying. Like it is just, man, this is a lot crammed in here. And I wish there was some more room to breathe and some more explanation and some more, you know, like I said, some more emotional beats, letting things breathe a little more. To go to the positive things, I do love multiverse stuff.
Oh yeah,
I do love the C-list characters they bring out, and like it's like, Demon and Grifter are on the team. That's weird.
That's the best part of like these post-apocalyptic alternate realities is you're like, finally, this Z-list
Like
character.
Shazam's like 5 kids jammed together by lightning.
That was the most fucked up thing. It's like they Voltron up to make Captain Thunder or something. You're like, what?
How
What
does
is
that be
this?
all of them?
Like, how does that work?
Voltron literally formed out of miners.
And just the thing too, as far as like just going over stuff, like you have a boat with like Clayface and Deathstroke, and they just get done in like a panel. It's like, what? I would like to see more of this, more of a something with these main top tier villains. But we have Grifter and we have like Element Woman, who is a amalgamation of at least 3 or 4 people. I don't even know. It's like, is this Destiny and Metamorpho and Poison Ivy mixed together? Who is this? And then Dime Store Enchantress with her Halloween store outfit on.
Oh god!
Put some respect on Enchantress' name, because she was probably one of my favorite characters in this. She was a badass.
I'm on their side now. Ah!
She was kicking everyone's ass. That was pretty cool.
She's the mole.
And I guess I can't ding them too much, because it's like, well, this is why we have so many spin-off series, is because we don't have time to make this core issue 64 issues. But I do feel like if they would have had one more issue, or just spent just a little more time on this world, like letting me feel like, get a sense of like the drama behind it. Because they kind of gloss over like what the beef is between, Emperor Aquaman and Wonder Woman. They kind of
slept together, and then...
But they don't explain it in this core issue, right?
Oh, I'm thinking of the cartoon they do.
I think they either explain it in the Aquaman spin-off series or the Wonder Woman. It's like, for you to get all these pieces, you got to go into all of it. And yeah, right. And that's kind of like, that's always been our gripe, right? That's usually like all of comic fandom's gripe and bitching. Is like, why do I need to buy all these issues to get the complete story? But I feel like maybe one more issue or even 2 would have helped this one kind of let it breathe a little more. I guess for the most part, you just get a very high-level introduction into the world, and I would have wished for just a little more context for the big conflict. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the conflict is the internal issue with Barry, but I feel like you just spend so much time with Barry and Batman instead of like the world, right? Barry is in a chair getting struck by lightning, not once, but twice.
I do like that. Just like, let's set up this electric chair on top of your mansion.
Let's make Barry into bacon.
Now, the last issue where Barry is talking with his mom, and he's like, "Look, I flubbed up. I've got to go back in time to stop me going back in time from stopping you from dying." And he's like, I thought that was really heartfelt. Like his mom even being like, think of all the other people that that don't get saved or end up dying. Jeff Johns has a way of just writing really heartfelt, compelling conversations, and if it involves a mom, it's a wrap. You're going to be crying at the end. If it involves parents, Jeff Johns is the man for it.
I'd put up a little more of a fight though if I was the mom. It's like, so what now? So what?
Only 40 million? I mean, I will make you your favorite cake every day, Barry.
I still think you can read this core issue and get a solid story, like Greg was saying. I think at its core, it is a solid story, and you don't have to go deeper. But I think if you want to really feel like you lived in this world, it kind of behooves you to at least check out like the main character, like your Aquamans and your Wonder Woman spinoffs.
Yeah, it's a tough recommend for like a new reader. This might be a bit much to like understand what's going on. This is a lot of like like especially a lot of different takes on characters you may not even know about.
If you fail time travel class every time, if you get an F in time travel, this might not be your cup of tea. Did we learn anything new about Flash from this story? Were there any major takeaways? Were there any other character arcs that you guys might have found interesting?
I mean, I'm not really a huge Flash fan to begin with, so I mean, I always knew he could run fast, so I didn't really learn much different from that.
But did you know he could run so fast he can go back in time and correct issues?
I know that now. And I think that was cool was in doing the research in the New 52 Barry, he's also super fast at thinking now. Like they changed his power set a little bit where like not only am I fast, but like I'm also really smart because I can like think fast too. And like I think that slight tweak in his like power set was really interesting and kind of took the character to another dimension because I mean, think about it. If for the Justice League, everyone's just like, oh, Batman and Superman and like they're like the most powerful, but like can they go back in time and like totally fuck up the future? I think there's a conversation of like, is Barry Allen potentially the strongest or most powerful Justice League member because he can do the most damage?
And then he's always kind of treated as like a goofball, like, and you know, before that too, he's always kind of like
totally,
the goofy
The dude
clown.
is a forensic scientist.
I know. He's like, this guy's smart. He's not a dumb fast guy.
Outside of Flash, is the obvious pick for best character in this Batman? Or is Batman like the best character in this? Thomas Wayne Batman.
Ooh.
I always thought like the emotional story, Batman had the most emotional
The
one.
letter, yeah. What did crazy ass Thomas Wayne write though? I couldn't imagine him writing a sincere letter at his mental state.
Every lottery number for the last 20 years.
All right, bet on these teams.
Yeah.
I do like how disheveled and just desperate and just downtrodden this version of Batman, even though like the regular Batman is usually, you could apply the same adjectives as well. But this version of Batman, Thomas Wayne, obviously did not take the loss of his son and wife lightly at all. I mean, you know, he ends up becoming Batman himself.
And the wife becomes the Joker.
Oh, shit, that's right. Having just read the core issues, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah, they don't tell you that for shit.
Damn, I forgot all about that. That's right, she becomes the Joker. The story goes what? It's Bruce that gets killed that night that they're leaving the theater, and the grief turns Thomas Wayne, the dad, into Batman, and she becomes the Joker. That's right, I forgot about that. Wow, yeah, Thomas Wayne all day. That is a hella interesting story.
I just like it when like we get these topsy-turvy interpretations of characters you already know, and like to see Deathstroke as like a pirate with Clayface, you're just like, oh, that's kind of fun. And like you just get like, I think it's just fun for the creative team to be like, what if we did this to like, what if Superman was like really skinny? And they're just like, make it happen. And then like, I just like the weird tweaks to like the normal that we're used to. That's what I really enjoy about this. And like metal and death metal, it's just like just the fun, crazy shit that you get to see.
The Superman, the imagery is just so jarring. This is like with a weird stick body.
Yeah, it really fucks you up.
Yeah. I'm getting a lot of it mixed up too because I watched the animation as well.
I need to watch the animated
which
series.
I think is a more streamlined, like I think more accessible fan or a new comic fan friendly. Everyone's super jacked in it. It's crazy. Everyone's super jacked. Little heads, giant bodies. I think he lasers off Aquaman's arm in it.
Oh, damn.
It's pretty nuts. Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
How about we go and shift gears to talking a little bit about the movie, right? So obviously we're recording, this episode drops the Wednesday before the movie premieres everywhere. And I want to get to talking about maybe some of the parallels and differences between what we've read and what we've seen so far in the trailers and such. I'm gonna kick it off by reading the premise for the movie as it's being advertised. It goes, worlds collide when the Flash uses his superpowers to travel back in time to change the events of the past. However, when his attempt to save his family inadvertently alters the future, he becomes trapped in a reality in which General Zod has returned, threatening annihilation. With no other superheroes to turn to, the Flash looks to coax a very different Batman out of retirement and rescue an imprisoned Kryptonian, albeit not the one he's looking for. So based on that and in the trailers that we've gotten, I want to hear, what are your thoughts and expectations going to the movies? Are there any noticeable parallels and differences that we can pull from just what we know so far?
I'm curious with the Michael Keaton because I remember when it was rumored it was like he was going to be Thomas Wayne since he's an older guy now.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't look like that. It looks like he's just another version of Batman. The Zod thing is interesting. I wasn't expecting Zod to come back. It looks very interesting, and I've heard good reviews about it, but it's going to be a lot different. I don't think you should expect, the Jeff Johns version. It's going to be...
This is not a 1-for-1.
They take they take like the inkling of that idea and then basically change all the pieces to the puzzle.
Greg, what about you, man? What are some of your observations?
Well, to talk about the Superwoman thing, I think we are going to get kind of a story like we got in Flashpoint with Superman. She does seem like she's breaking out of a building, so I don't know if she was kidnapped, and then maybe that explains why General Zod is there. Like, if no Superman existed, he could come and start destroying stuff. So maybe she's being held captive. Michael Keaton's Batman was cool. I don't know where that's going to fit in. I think that's just a fun way to sell tickets to people who are fans.
It is absolutely the studio's break-in-case glass emergency plan.
Keaton, get over here.
This will make everyone forget about Ezra Miller. Michael Keaton.
It does seem like the overall theme of time travel and the butterfly effect that comes with it is going to be pretty prevalent, right? It's still Barry traveling back in time to change events. It looks like it's the motivation is still saving his mom. Obviously, there is no Reverse Flash in this universe or in the movie universe.
Maybe?
Yet.
True, maybe. You're right.
I'm hoping it's Gorilla Grodd in a Flash suit. That would make me so happy.
Oh, man. I'll see it twice if that's the case.
Oscars. Movie of the year.
Reverse Flash would be a welcome surprise, but at the same time, you're like, and now what are you guys going to do with him? It's like this. James Gunn is about to erase all this shit. But back to what I was saying, as far as Barry going back in time to save his mom, that seems like that's still going to be the case. But Ed, you pointed out some of the differences. I guess we can't tell if this is like his universe or an alternate reality. In the comic, he doesn't meet two Flashes. He's in that moment. Yeah. This is him going back in his past. It's not him replacing himself in the past, or his current reality. See, time travel, man. I hate having.
And
to
there's Ben Affleck
it.
Batman in this too.
Do you know how often I have to remind myself that Ben Affleck is in this movie? Because Michael Keaton is seems to be the only top,
overshadowing everybody.
Right? See,
it's gonna be called Batman Flashpoint.
Even in 2023, Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck. It's like the subheading. And we don't know if Keaton or Affleck will be playing Thomas Wayne. It sounds like they're both just reprising their roles as their respective Batman. And then Greg brought it up, but there's no Superman. In this case, we've got Kara Jor-El being played by Sasha Calle. Some other differences I've noted just from what I know so far. The main conflict / world-ending event isn't going to be some war between Aquaman and Wonder Woman, even though I will say that would have been, they
awesome.
could have done it, and that would have been awesome. Like, we would have seen a different side of Gal Gadot.
They could do a true reset with all the main Justice League people.
Right.
Skinny Henry Cavill, make him lose a lot of weight, he has the machinist, like Christian Bale, the old ribs.
Ugh.
I think the biggest similarity between the two, outside of the time travel, is the purpose for both of these. For both, right? Like, the comic was to usher in this new age of storytelling, right? Because prior to that, it was from 1985 up till 2010 was considered post Infinite Crisis DC continuity, and then Flashpoint comes along, New 52 rewrites, all those years of continuity. Well, we're seeing that same thing with this movie. The purpose of this movie is to go ahead and usher in a new era of storytelling, and I think that's a cool parallel between the source material and the movie itself.
Yeah,
DC Studios. State of movies was in such bad affairs that they're like, all right, bust out the Flashpoint. We're gonna do the same thing that worked in the comics, bring it over here.
But they still have Aquaman movie and the Blue Beetle movie coming out, right?
I don't know which order. I think it's Blue Beetle first and then Aquaman. I think Aquaman closes out the year. I'll say this much. I was really impressed by the Blue Beetle trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely plan to see that. Probably more so than Aquaman. Aquaman might not be a first day opening night movie for me, but Blue Beetle is. With the hopes that it still feels like, on the topic of Aquaman, Jason Momoa and Gal Gadot, it doesn't seem like they're giving us a definite answer if we expect to see it. It still feels malleable. The the door hasn't completely closed on them transitioning.
Not like
into,
Henry Cavill. It was just like, nah, no.
That door was closed and set on fire.
But my hope is that if Blue Beetle performs well enough, maybe they'll bring him over. And I'm hoping
Totally.
it rightfully deserves that. I hope the movie is good and people are like, yeah, we want to see more of this guy, because I think DC needs that. I think it needs like a young, fresh faced like superhero for like a younger audience. I
Break
think it
from
needs a little
Batman.
bit of that.
A break from Batman, please. As much as I like the last one, it's like, please.
So we kind of just addressed this last topic because this next question is in regards to maybe the biggest reason you'd be a little hesitant about seeing Flashpoint, even though it feels like no one else has been bothered by that. At least like
Nobody.
critics and even James Gunn doesn't seem to be bothered by.
Said was, really good.
And I mean, obviously, we're addressing the elephant in the room here when it comes to this movie, and that's the main hero himself, right? The hero himself, or in this case, themselves, because Ezra Miller identifies as they, them. The Flash themselves, the lead star, Ezra Miller. Oh, man. What can you say?
Maybe the greatest villain of all time.
Oh, man.
Do you think he was deep in what do they call it? Method acting?
Method acting.
But he got it mixed up. He got it mixed up.
Yeah.
Instead of method acting as good-hearted, do the right thing Barry Allen, he's over here as Eeyore Thawne.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's Reverse
indeed.
Flash, which means we might maybe that's it. Maybe, Ed, you're onto something. We're going to see Reverse
it's
Flash.
him.
And all this shenanigans, these allegations, these accusations have
That
been
would be
leading up to
hilarious
this.
if he plays himself as Reverse Flash.
You'd be like, huh, okay, it makes sense.
Starting fights during karaoke.
Yeah, he just
It's probably safe to say anyone invested in comics or is even slightly interested or aware of this movie has seen some sort of headline about
been
Ezra
crazy.
Miller in the last, I think safe to say at least this past year, we've seen a lot of headlines about Ezra Miller, but I think they've started as early as like 2020, 2021. This person has had many allegations and serious legal issues come up. What feels like that was the movie rollout, right? Like instead of the trailers doing the
Yeah.
speaking, it's been Ezra Miller headlines.
The greatest hype for a movie is his allegations and misdoings.
maybe he really subscribes to the no such thing as bad publicity. Like, yeah, kind of is. Sorry, Ezra.
I want you to take everything you thought or heard about Ezra Miller and all of his baggage and drama, and I want you to realize that it is simply the air above the tip of the iceberg, all right? That is the air. It's not even the tip. There's a whole ass continental-sized glacier of drama and legal shit under the surface. I think he took Kanye West lyric, who's already a controversial person in this day, also a controversial person in this day and age.
But he's Reverse Flash.
A movie with Kanye West and Ezra Miller just being shitty people would be pretty awesome.
Oh, no.
I think about the Kanye West lyric, I feel the pressure under more scrutiny, and what I do, act more stupidly. That's how I feel about Ezra Miller. Well, where do I start, right? There's a laundry list of things like fighting with patrons at a bar, physically assaulting a woman with a chair. There's multiple allegations, really gross allegations of him like grooming minors and sexual harassment. Ezra Miller was on the run from authorities at one point, like avoiding being served papers. They've been charged with felony burglary and so on and so on. There is an insanely detailed timeline of events. I shared in the outline. I don't know if you guys saw it, but on the Vulture website, there is an outline there's an outline of the history of Ezra Miller's controversial career. And I'll leave it to the listeners to go find that article and read it for themselves. Just make sure you carve out like a 2-hour block, because I'm telling you, Greg, did you see how much scrolling you had to do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, COVID affected us in a lot of different ways, and I think it broke Ezra Miller's brain. Like, he was like, I think there's a point where they're like, he maybe started a cult on an island in Hawaii, and it's just like, what? Like, okay, sure. Like, what else can you do?
I mean, to be fair, that's a nice place to start a cult.
Ezra Miller is a walking shitty person bingo card. It's like, think of the shittiest things someone can do outside of murder and genocide. It's that bingo card is pretty full. The more I read about him, the more I started to see them as like this conflicted and polarizing person of a very interesting career. You know, like on one end, early in his career, and even like still to this day, Miller has championed righteous causes. And, you know, he's been an outspoken person for the LGBTQ community. They've been vocal about the environment. They've talked about corporate greed. But then you've got like all this other stuff that outweighs any of the good that you can possibly say about the person. On the topic of things that might impact your enjoyment of the movie or might make you hesitant about supporting this movie, is Ezra Miller's baggage, to be nice about it, does his baggage impact your point of view or you going into this movie?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's you can't deny it and you can't ignore it, and it is like gonna paint it in a weird light, and it's also just like it makes it even creepier that you just have to think about, like, why did the studio say, okay, well, it's greenlit anyway? If none of the charges stuck, then we're gonna use them, and it's just like that's even grosser. Like, you get someone that does all these terrible things, and then you get this big production company that is just like, yeah, we're committed to him anyway, and it's just like, I don't like that at all. Actually,
Yeah.
I will be watching it and watching his performance and just being like, can I even like it? Can I like his interpretation of the Flash? And it's going to be a weird viewing experience.
This might be the first superhero movie where I don't root for the hero at all.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for all the other characters,
Where's the reverse Flash?
but the Flash.
Yeah.
I guess the Ezra Miller controversy has kind of diverted attention from how much of a mess this movie has kind of been itself. A ton of reshoots. I think I counted 4 different director changes, all of them being for like creative differences. It might not have been 4, it might have been like 2 or 3. It was a few directors that have come and gone for this movie due to creative changes. Like I said, reshoots. Obviously, the pandemic had an impact on the release schedule. What else did I see? I want to say I tallied up. It's been 10 years since this movie was announced to it being released. Like 10 years. So, obviously you're going to expect, some sort of issues of production or behind the scenes, but I don't think you would expect this level of like, just tomfoolery and shenanigans to be going on. And then when you consider like Flash as a character in a property at that for the longest time they've talked about a Flash movie since the who's old boy that played in the TV series
Grant Gustin?
No, not Grant Gustin.
Oh,
that's actually who they should have had.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
If they would have charged us more money for the tickets to compensate for the reshoots in CGI to put Grant Gustin in there, I'd be happy with it.
Gladly.
Because who hasn't started a fucking cult in Hawaii? Is Grant Gustin. Grant Gustin looks like someone that helps every person. Like a old lady across the street, that's Grant Gustin. He's helping her out, all right? Little kid loses a balloon, he's climbing a tree to get it, right? Like,
yeah.
That would have been a great PR move, is to just like get Grant Gustin involved. But I'm talking about the original Flash from the TV show. I think his name is something Snipes.
Oh, Wesley.
Yeah. Yep. Nailed it. Got it in one. Wesley Snipes as the Flash.
I'm having a terrible brain fart at the moment, and there's
Always
someone
bet on black, and it zooms across the room.
There's a listener right now yelling the name of the actor I'm having a hard time recalling. But since the Flash's inception into the world of like live action, it has not been an easy ride for the character to finally like get a live action like movie adaptation. Obviously, we've had like TV shows, and the CW show ran for a while, it was successful. But as far as like entering the Hollywood world, the Flash property has always been kind of like a difficult character like to get off the ground in the movie world. So fans are finally treated to a dedicated Flash movie, and you get like a shitty person.
Yeah.
And then this shit happens.
You get all this baggage, and it's like the last one. It's like, okay, here's your Flash movie, and it might be the last one.
Yeah.
But it's also conflicting, right? Like, I'm saying all this stuff, but the studio is showing you something different. To Greg's point, I know when I started seeing these headlines, I was like, oh, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm waiting for the studio to be like, okay, we're gonna pull a Batgirl movie move here,
Yeah.
Yep.
and we're going to go ahead
Write it off.
and trash this movie
Tax
to write
break.
it off. The publicity isn't worth it. We don't want to have to deal with the drama. But that's not been the case. I read that there's already a second script that was written by the same guy that wrote the Aquaman film script. He wrote it just in case, like, if the Flash movie does well, then they've got another script. Well, then all this Ezra Miller stuff starts happening, And then I believe the studio was like, we're going to hold off. We're not going to go about it just yet. And then around January of this year, they were like, no, the movie is a go. Ezra Miller's in treatment. Like it started. They weren't openly being like, no, we support it. It's a go. It felt like a little cautious. And then they hit us with the trailer, and we saw Michael Keaton, and we forgot all about it.
Yeah, then we forgot about all the shit he did.
Ed, you kind of hinted at it, but James Gunn has called Flashpoint one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen. And that's kind of in line with all the other early reviews and things I'm seeing from critics. They've all called this like a really great movie, but no one has really addressed. I haven't seen too many people like address that, Ezra Miller's baggage has really kind of impacted their viewing experience. So maybe it won't be the case here, but I was curious to hear if that's going to be the case for you guys. Like I said, I just won't be rooting for Flash.
No.
I'm going to focus on all the other factors, like the fact Ben Affleck gets to, reprise his role. We get to see Michael Keaton. I'm very curious how Sasha Calle portrays Kara Jor-El. All right, gents, one last question on the topic of Flash and Flashpoint. Do you got any other recommendations for Flash reading material? Besides Flashpoint, what are some of the other Flash titles or kind of related comics that you would recommend someone check out if they like Flashpoint, if they want to dive more into this world?
Flash has one of the more wackier rogue galleries of like villains that he gets to face off with that are really cool. I think there is like a Rogue War or something like that where he just like they fight one another and they fight the Flash, which is awesome. There's a Black Label book called like Rogues where they kind of like have to team up to steal something. Like it's a rich history, and honestly, Flash could be his own publishing house of just like separate stories with all the stuff he has.
Well said. I'm going to co-sign specifically the Jeff Johns Flash run of Scott Collins. I'm a sucker for a creative team that sticks with a book for multiple issues. And that was really my deep dive and introduction into the world of Flash. By the time I finished reading the Jeff Johns Scott Collins Flash run, I was a fan of the whole Flash mythos, especially his Rogues Gallery. Jeff Johns makes you put respect on all of his wacky-ass villains. Mirror Master, Weather Wizard, like all these wacky villains that you would think would be absolutely silly. Jeff Johns finds a way to make them deadly, interesting, heartfelt, and all of that. Like it's a masterclass, and a hero is only as good as his villains and supporting characters. Some great supporting characters as well. Ed, you got any recommendations?
I haven't read a ton of Flash books. Like I said, I'm not a huge Flash fan, but a book that I like where Flash is basically one of the main guys is Darwin Cook's New Frontier.
Oh yeah, solid choice.
Where basically, Superman gets knocked out of the equation right off the bat, so you have kind of like your Silver Age characters coming to the forefront. You have like Green Lantern. It's basically like it's a Justice League book, but it's a spotlight on Green Lantern and the Flash, and I think he's used really well because you get to see him, he's seeing all these like godlike heroes, and he's wondering how he fits in and if he can contribute.
He's like, I'm just a guy that runs fast.
He says, I just run fast.
I got good Nike sneakers.
But him and Green Lantern play an integral part to ending the story. So
Ed, I don't know if you can see that, but right over there, we got the New Frontier.
Nice.
That looks like one of the Absolute editions.
It is, yeah. It keeps the shelf in place. It's so heavy. That thing is fucking thick.
It's holding up the wall.
I'm gonna give one more honorable mention to one more recommendation. The Flash Rebirth. If you don't feel like reading a 20, I think the Jeff Johns run is like longer than 20 issues. It's like 40, 60 issues. But the Flash Rebirth is also written by Jeff Johns, illustrated by Ethan Van Sciver. Yeah, Ethan Van Sciver. And that one is only 6 issues. If you know nothing about Flash, you could jump in with Flash Rebirth and absolutely probably become a fan, because I know Jeff Johns has a soft spot for the character. But Flash Rebirth is also a really good Flash series that doesn't take a lot of commitment or knowledge going in. Besides that, I think we can call the review a wrap. All right, I'm curious to see if any of the things we shared, our thoughts, opinions, etc., change when we actually see the movie. But let's get started on our next segment, which I think will go over really well for a guy like Greg that likes first issues. It's time to grab a fistful of comics.
can either have a mouthful of teeth or a fistful of comics.
Fistful of Comics is a segment dedicated to helping all you comic-curious newbies and loyal Wednesday warriors find the best new comics, the best starting points, and creative teams that you can't afford to miss. You know that we get help from our guy, Ben Kingsbury, the owner of Gotham City Limit, Jacksonville's premier comic shop. He's compiled a list of the top 3 comics you can't afford to miss next month. He's kind of like our Miss Cleo. I need to get a little like psychic sound effect. You know, he's like our Miss Cleo. He knows what comic books are coming out in the future and the ones that you'll probably enjoy. And he's got a pretty cool theme going with the list this week. So if you're a fan of horror comics, listen up because this one is catered to you. Let's get some music going and see what he's got for us today. All right, this first one is a familiar one because it got the cosign from Troy Jeffrey Allen a few episodes ago. So if you're one of our eagle-eared listeners, you won't be surprised that this is also on Ben's list and that he gave it a cosign. Here it is.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, Short Box listeners. I'm Ben K, representing Gotham City Limit in Jacksonville, Florida. And here's 3 comics you should add to your pull list ASAP. There is a common theme for these 3 comics as well, horror. So buckle up and let's take it to the limit. First up, AWA Studios presents Ribbon Queen #1 of an 8-part series. When you hear the author's name, Garth Ennis, my guess is you think of The Preacher, The Boys, or maybe even his amazing Punisher run. However, Mr. Ennis penned one of my favorite stories of all time, Red Rover Charlie. Please do yourself a favor and check out that iconic story. But back to Ribbon Queen, Garth has promised a fast-paced and thought-provoking horror series 10,000 years in the making. However, if I'm being honest, they had me at Garth Ennis.
That was the Ribbon Queen #1 written by Garth Ennis and Jason Burrows on art duty. That comes out July 26. It wouldn't be right if we didn't have a DC comic on this list, and it just so happens it's that time of year for big comic events like Flashpoint to take place. So here's what DC has cooking up.
Next up, DC's Nightmare Summer Event Night Terrors #1 of a 4-part series. The good news, the event's only a 4-part series. More good news, key alert, the first appearance of the new villain Insomnia is in Night Terrors First Blood #1. I heard that straight out of Joshua Williamson's mouth himself. Even more good news, no multiversal battles or time-changing events, just good old-fashioned Nightmare on Elm Street type of horror vibes. Bad news, there are over 20 separate 2-part character series. Joker, Punchline, Batman, Superman, Nightwing, Black Adam, Angel Breaker, Ravager, and more. Oh, and a bit of more bad news, the artwork on the multiple comic covers for this event are beyond amazing. This one might just end up terrifying your bank account.
That was good. That was really good.
Ben, was that a pick or a warning? Like, do you want people to buy Night Terrors?
It was an omen.
That is very. It's a very appropriate for a Flashpoint episode.
Yeah, well said. All right, Night Terrors #1 comes out July 11th. Once again, you've got Joshua Williamson on writing duties. You've got a few artists on that as well. All right, and last but not least, if you had any plans to visit the majestic continent of Antarctica anytime soon, you might want to reconsider or just cancel those plans outright after you hear this next one. Here's Ben for you one more time.
And last but not least, Top Cow and Image Comics presents Antarctica #1. What's more terrifying than never returning from a secretive research station in Antarctica? Maybe having to go there yourself looking for your lost father. A new, non-stop sci-fi action story, rife with conspiracies abound, set on the most horrifying place on Earth. Remember, Short Box listeners, the truth is out there.
Ben just called Antarctica the most horrifying place on
Wow.
Earth.
He knows something.
You know what's more horrifying than Antarctica? A cult in Hawaii. All right, that is just an oxymoron, and I hate it. All right, gents, we've got 3 options today. We've got the Ribbon Queen #1, Night Terrors #1, and Antarctica #1, which I forgot to mention. Antarctica #1 comes out July 12th. That'll be coming out through writers Simon Brooks and Willie Roberts through Top Cow and Image Comics. So of the 3 options, what's the one that caught your eye the most? Which one are you most interested in? Greg, do us the honors of going first. Which one? Which one you got?
Well, for me this week, for the three choices, it has to be DC's Night Terror. The event sounds super scary and super cool. I like the idea that it's like set in the dreamscape, doesn't have any real repercussions in the DC universe. A good thing, I know we listed a lot of bad things of this series. DC is halting all of their DC books for that whole event. So there's not going to be like a regular Batman and a Batman Night Terror. So your bank account will feel the effects, but not as much as you think. They're absolutely right. The covers are badass. I've already pre-ordered a few of them myself. So all due respect to the other creators and books, but DC Night Terrors is my choice.
Hell yeah. Solid. Ed, what about you?
I'm going to go with the Garth Ennis Ribbon Queen. He's doing it for AWA, and I liked his last series. I like Garth Ennis, but his last series, the Marjorie Finnegan Temporal Criminal, and some rolls off the tongue. That was a really fun series, and like I said, I'm always interested to see what he's up to. It seems like a little bit different than, I can't say his usual fare because he does writes pretty much every genre. So I'm hoping it kind of goes into like this with AWA. He's kind of doing some different things than his I hate superheroes and war stuff.
I guess it's going to be an even a three-way tie or three-way split amongst us because despite Antarctica being the most horrifying place in the world for Ben,
ice,
I'm pretty interested by this comic, Antarctica #1. For starters, the cover looks awesome. Secondly, it's a new creative team. I'm not familiar with Simon Burks or Willie Roberts at all, and that intrigues me because these, especially of a new #1, right? So you got a #1, so the barrier to entry is very low. And then it's a new creative team, so I've got no like biases or anything to going in. So I'm going in like completely fresh, and I always welcome that with comic books. So I'm gonna go with Antarctica #1. For everyone else, though, if any of those titles piqued your interest, Ben's picks will be linked in the show notes. So if you want to look into any of them a little further and make a decision for yourself, check out the show notes. And then go to your comic shop, your local comic shop, and get your pre-orders in as soon as you can. And remember, even if you don't live in Jax, you can still take it to the limit. Comics, collectibles, and exclusive variant covers you won't find anywhere else are available on GothamCityLimit.com. Big shout-outs to Ben for the list this week. And with that being said, Greg, our time together comes to a close, my friend. You have been a fantastic co-host.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wish I could run back in time and start this episode all over again. I've had a killer time here with you guys. Thank you for having me on. I really, really appreciate it.
Greg, are you saying that you would run back in time to stop you from, it's like you taking the place of yourself?
No, I would stop old me so I could take his place and start it again, even if it meant Western Europe would be underwater and millions of lives would be lost, It was that much fun.
That's the least I'd expect you to do for the short box. I appreciate that. But Greg, I'm going to have links for First Issue Club listed in the show notes so people can subscribe to the podcast so they can follow along with you and what you guys got going on. But do you have anything that you want to share with the listeners yourself? Any upcoming episodes, special announcements, parting words, et cetera, et cetera?
Upcoming episodes, we're going to hit episode 300 within the month. Nice. And we got a fun show for that planned. Every big monument or milestone episode, we do what we call an improv, a joke show. Like every Halloween and Christmas, we do one. So 300, we're going to have just a fun, goofy show, which we really enjoy doing. It's kind of crazy that we're hitting 300. We started this show 2015 thinking it would last maybe a month, and we're still doing it this many years later. So it's been really fun. But yeah, if you want to get more First Issue Club, go to our website, firstissueclub.com. We're on every social media you can think of: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever you like to use. We're probably on it. And then of course, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/firstissueclub. Other than that, I'll send it on to you.
Hell yeah, Greg. I'm gonna check out that 300.
Congrats, man. That's a big number. That's a big achievement.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to announce the winners of our Boom Studios comic giveaway here in this next part. So don't go nowhere. Here's some music for you. Enjoy it. Don't go nowhere. We'll be right back. and we are back once again. That was music provided to you by our amazing Shortbox music team. I've got every member of our Shortbox music team listed out in these show notes. So if you want to hear music from the likes of Mecca the Marvelous, DJ Crumbs, Delectable Beats, Learn, but we got a solid, actually, we got a that group is growing like the Avengers. At some point, they're going to have enough people to start their own podcast. But if you like any of the music on this show, please check out the links to the artists that I have in the show notes. Give them a follow. Listen to their music on Apple Music and Spotify and all that. SoundCloud. They're also on YouTube. Show some support for the people that give us the great music. We're now going to read off a couple of emails. Some of you eagle-eared listeners will recall, what is it? I believe 2 episodes ago is when me and Ed did our Shortbox news episode. We announced a contest for some badass Boom Studio comics. Greg, who was the guest at the time, donated a huge care package of great Boom Studio comics. There's a bunch of variants for like Berserker in here. There is Something Is Killing the Children variant covers, some trades in here as well. So a lot of comics that I would just want to give away. I want to spread the wealth to our diehard and most loyal listeners. I ask you guys to send in an email or a short message telling me what your favorite Boom Studio comic series was, whether it was current or recently finished or just in general. And we got some good answers, Ed. All right, first and foremost, we got an email from Henry Hernandez. It's titled Boom Studio Giveaway. And he writes, "Yo, Shortbox, great show as always. Keep them coming. I got a few series I have recently enjoyed. I start with the most obvious one for me. It be Berserker by Keanu Reeves, Matt Kent, and Raphael Grandpa." Well, I think it's actually Ron Garney on Berserker, but maybe Raphael Grandpa did a few issues. He goes on to write, Mosley is always a go with Rob Gilroy. Big Trouble in Little China, since it's been one of my favorite movies of all time. There's a Boom Studio series called Faithless. Yes, I have some Triple X covers as well. He continues, King of Nowhere. This is W.D. Maxwell, enough said. Another Boom Studio series that he likes, Claws and Proctor Valley Road, from the great Grant Morrison. Anything he writes, I'll pick up. Ronin Island just felt a little bit of samurai stuff and stuff with nightmares. You liked Goosebumps as a kid, then this is a book for you. And on the topic of horror, I'll champion and recommend you guys watch From, Season 1, available on Apple Plus, and can't wait for The Bear Season 2. Keep reading comics. Big shout out to Henry Hernandez for that. He basically just listed every single Boom Studios series out there.
Yeah, Big Trouble in Little China. I remember that was fun because it starts where the movie ends.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's pretty cool, yeah.
I love when comics are able to like jump in those points. I feel like that's a really good use of the medium when it comes to like movie and like movie and TV properties. Like find a little crack to fit in and tell like a story that maybe isn't big enough or, you know, it doesn't make sense to be told live action. All right, we got another email, short and sweet email. This one comes from a new email, maybe a first-time emailer. I wasn't familiar with the name on this, but it is Captain Brew Squid.
That's a name you to remember, for sure.
For sure, right? I'd be like, yo, it's our homeboy Captain Brew Squid. All right. It looks like the contest brought out some new emailers, which we love seeing. He writes, Ghost Lore is my favorite by Boom so far. I've been dying to get into Something Is Killing the Children someday for sure. Thank you for the awesome pod. You know what? Thank you for the awesome email, Captain Brew. Appreciate that. How did you find out about Something's Killing the Children? You picked it up in trade or issues?
Yeah, I picked up in trade. I liked a lot of the covers, and then I was just reading. Everyone was a lot of rave reviews about it, and I just picked up the trade, and yeah, it's awesome. I really like it. There's a couple spin-offs now. I don't know if I like it that much, but I do like the main the main book. So I'll probably pick up another trade or two when they come out. But yeah, it's good. All
right, let's see what else we got. We got a entry. I think they wanted to keep the email private. They just want to enter in the contest, keep the email private. But they did have a really good question about our thoughts and about AI and integrating with comics, being used as a tool in comics. And Ed, I know I have some comments on the topic that might be a little long-winded for this episode already. So to Tommy Hazelwood, who sent in the email, I'll say this much. Ed, how about we revisit this particular topic for an episode that we got a little time to breathe?
Yeah.
Because I imagine you as an artist, you've got a hell of a perspective on it.
Yeah.
Done deal. Well, Tommy, thank you for the email, and I got you down for a submission in this contest, and solid question. I promise we'll get to it. And we also got an email from our newest Patreon subscriber, Mac Godwin, badass name. He actually messaged me on Instagram, and he wanted this to be read on the show. So here we go. He writes, hey, Shortbox team, my name's Mac. I'm a new listener from Auckland, New Zealand.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Shortbox Global, baby. He goes on to say, just writing in response to the latest pod prompt. As cliche as it is, and you'll probably get a lot of this answer, but my favorite Boom Studios title at the moment has to be Something is Killing the Children. Just started volume 3 of the trades, and it's amazing. I also bought House of Slaughter, so I'm excited for that. Just want to say how much I love the pod, and it's always the first thing I listen to when it drops. Other titles I have, but and absolutely loved recently have been Dual Powerbomb, Real Original, Righteous Thirst, and he wrote Real Original in parentheses, not like I was saying like real, like dissing him, like, Real Original. He goes on to say Righteous Thirst for Vengeance and Bird King, to name a few, and I'll always champion Space Riders, Headlopper, and Curse Words. Keep up the epic potting.
Solid list.
Solid list. If Cesar was here, he'd probably do a really good a New Zealander impersonation. I won't, because that'd be disrespectful, and you'd probably quit our Patreon. So I'll just say this, Mac, solid list. Thank you for being a listener, man. Thank you for the email, awesome, too. All right, and last but not least, what type of email segment would we have if we didn't hear from our guy, T-Mix? And I'll go ahead and say this right now on air, right? I want to apologize to T-Mix because he sent in an email a few weeks ago, but I kind of like lost it in the episode technical difficulties. So T-Mix has been on it. All right. He hasn't dropped the ball at all. It's been me. He writes, boom, baby. And the email kicks off with, yo, what up, Shortbox? It's been a minute, and that's been on my poor timing. Well, maybe on Cesar, because he moves you guys off the regular schedule. C'est la vie. Love hearing Shaggy on the mic at the start of the episode, but real glad we've gotten some C. The Calvin Hobbes spotlight was fantastic. Wow, this is a lot of catch up. We're talking about the Calvin. He's talking about the Calvin Hobbes spotlight. That was a few episodes ago. But anyways, he goes, I think my two favorite Calvin Hobbes strips, especially as a parent, are one, a wordless story showing Calvin waiting at the bus stop of Hobbes while it's raining. Calvin gets on the bus. Then you see Calvin's mom run out in the rain to get Hobbes. Two, in a Rosalind story, just before his parents head out, Calvin's dad says to his mom about dinner. A conversation with real pauses. Can you imagine? Both are the epitome of life as a parent. On to the Boom Studios giveaway. Hopefully this isn't everyone's favorite. I'm going with Something is Killing the Children by James Tynion IV and Godzilla versus Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I didn't even know Godzilla teamed with the Power Rangers? That's kind of cool.
I missed that one too.
All right, you guys have been hyping Something's Killing the Children for a long time, and it's really good. My second pick I championed last year. It's just a fun read. One champion, Blue Beetle Trailer. Hasta la próxima, mis amigos. Thank you, everyone, for writing in. It seems like the commonalities in regards to Boom Studios at this moment. Something is Killing the Children, and I'd say by a landslide. I feel like that was the most recurring one.
And the spinoff, the House of Slaughter is a spinoff.
Yeah. All right, how do we want to do this? You know what? How about this? Because we got such prompt responses.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to ask a second time. You know, sometimes like it's like no one wants this free thing I'm giving. You know, the last contest was like that where I got like one entry, which was cool, you know, but it was like I'm giving free stuff away. I think I'm going to reward the promptness is what I'm rewarding. You know, call it a participation trophy if you want. Fuck it. You guys are getting free Boom Studio comics. That's a hell of a trophy to get. Yeah. So I'm going to send something to everyone that emailed in an effort to encourage our listeners that when I announce a contest, get your emails in. You might win, all right? So T-Mix, Captain Bruce Squid, Tommy Hazelwood. Matt Good, when you live in New Zealand, the postage is going to be a little tight, all right? So that one's going to take a little bit. And Henry Hernandez, obviously. I got you guys covered. Expect something in the mail soon. And since it'll be maybe a couple of weeks before we're back on the mics together, because I like saving the emails when I've got you, Ed, I think I'll save a future contest and prompt for another time. So for right now, let's just go ahead and bask in the glory that is our listeners winning this Boom Studios comic giveaway. We'll give a round of applause to all y'all. Congratulations. Thank you for the emails. Now, if you're listening right now and you're like, well, I want to send an email just to champion something or share a recommendation or let you guys know my thoughts on your Flashpoint review, I encourage you to send us an email at theshortboxjacks@gmail.com. We're always accepting emails, all right? Whether it be for a contest or not, we love hearing from you guys. Write into the show or DM us on Instagram and Twitter. Just let me know you want it read on the show. We love hearing from you guys. With that said, we're going to a very special champion season edition of the show. And considering, I guess, depending on how long we talk about Across the Spider-Verse, maybe I'll drop this as like a separate thing. We already dropped an Across the Spider-Verse movie review, but we're going to do another one because I want to hear Ed's take, because we literally just got done for a private watch party, and I'm curious to hear what Ed's thoughts. And to the surprise of absolutely no one, Ed and I were pretty damn long-winded when it came to talking about Across the Spider-Verse. And since this episode is already pretty long, we decided to post that conversation as a separate episode over on our Patreon. So if last week wasn't enough Across the Spider-Verse talk for you, or if you're interested in hearing Ed's take on the movie, join the Shortbox family over at patreon.com/shortbox. Besides that, there you have it, Shortbox Nation. That's the end of the show. Thank you for hanging out for this conversation today. And a big shout out to Greg Lichtteig from the First Issue Club for being a fantastic co-host. We couldn't have done it without him. If you enjoyed the episode, help us spread the word. Share this episode with a friend or someone you know that loves comics as much as we do. And if you're feeling extra generous, feel free to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That won't cost you nothing, but it would mean a lot to us. Now come back next week to hear a very good conversation I had with graphic novelist and educator Leela Corman. It was recorded live at this year's Duval Comic and Zine Fest. We got to talking about her process, what it takes to be an Eisner-nominated comic creator, and what it's like teaching sequential art as a college professor. That conversation drops next Wednesday. And if any of you will be at HeroesCon this weekend, catch my panel with the creators of Berserker, one of the best-selling comic series coming out through Boom Studios. I'll be sitting down with Matt Kent and Ron Garney on Saturday, June 18th at 3:30 p.m. in room 208. We're going to be talking about the making of the comic and what it was like working with the incomparable Keanu Reeves on this series. So if you'll be at HeroesCon, I invite you to attend that panel. I would love to meet you as well. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, go read your comics, and continue to make mine and yours Shortbox. I'll talk to you next week. Peace.